Thanks for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to Mr. John Dignan. On behalf of the Board of Education of the Wayne Westline Community School District, I welcome you here, sir, to this interview for the position of Superintendent. Mr. Dignan is currently the Director of Post-Secondary Options and Community Partnerships for the Southfield Public Schools in Southfield, Michigan. I'd like to take just a moment to go over the format for tonight's interview. This interview will take 90 minutes. There will be 21 questions from members of the board, and toward the end of the interview, if time permits, we will give the candidate an opportunity to ask some questions of the board and also make a closing statement. Mr. Silveri, our search consultant, who's sitting over here, will keep us aware of the time and make sure that the chair knows when we're getting close to the end. Audience feedback is welcome, and it may be submitted from those in attendance on the forms that we have located at the lectern at the rear of the room. There's some pencils and pens there. We will collect these forms at the end of the interview, and each member of the board will receive a copy before they leave the room tonight. And although the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the board, we value and consider the input from all our stakeholders in this process. Sir, I'd like to begin with an opening question.
Sure.
And that question is, while we've had the opportunity to review your application materials, which obviously we found satisfactory, the audience has not. And we'd like to know if you'd briefly review your background and share what causes you to be interested in this position at this point in your career.
I sure will. First of all, I'd like to thank the board and the community for having me here this evening. I was born and raised in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Went kindergarten through 12th grade in Ypsilanti Public Schools. I graduated from Ypsi High and ended up getting a football scholarship to Michigan State, where I received 2 BAs, one in integrated studies and the other in communications. I also have a teaching certificate from Wayne State, a Master's of Art in History from Eastern Michigan University, a Master's from Medina University in Educational Leadership Innovation, Ed Specialist at Oakland University in Educational Leadership and Innovation, and then I'm presently finishing my doctorate right now. I come from a family of educators. My mother was an educator for 50 years, including being a superintendent in multiple school districts. My father taught for 43 years and also coached for over 50. My sister is a special needs teacher in a self-contained classroom working with AI and CI students. It's a calling. Education is important to me as well as my family. My work experience, I didn't get into education right out of the bat. I lived in Paris, France for close to 2 years coaching football and playing there, and then went to corporate America, worked at a Fortune 500 company, did not like that, and ended up going to my calling, which was working with kids. I was a football coach at the University of Maryland in Eastern Michigan, and then I got married, and me and my wife had a courageous conversation. And so it was at that time that I decided I wanted to go to my true path in teaching. I was a teacher at Lincoln Consolidated Schools. I taught middle school and high school, everything from government to geography to world history. My greatest experience teaching was creating a class called the Lincoln Academic Development Center, where we targeted at-risk kids that were either credit deficient or probably were not going to graduate, and worked with them. It was probably one of the most rewarding times in my career as far as an educator. From there, I got a call from the superintendent to ask me to be assistant principal at the high school I worked at. I became an assistant principal, and then she called a few years later and wanted me to become the principal. One of the things when I took over as the principal at Lincoln Consolidated, we landed on the priority list. And so as you can imagine, that was pretty tough for a lot of people. A lot of teachers, everyone, the community was in kind of disarray from us landing at that destination. But through the collaboration of our community and our staff, we were able to get off the priority list, which was huge because it kind of set us in motion and kind of stabilized our district. From there, I went to Warren Mott, where I was the principal for 6 years. Part of the reason that I was hired at Warren Mott, they were at 9% at top to bottom rankings, and they thought they were going to become a priority school. Got the job, and when I arrived, the morale was low amongst the staff. A lot of the teachers felt battered. So one of the thing was to rehabilitate and heal the staff. Within 3 years, we were recognized by U.S. News World Reports as a gold standard school. Also, 4 years later, we were taken off the focus school list, and Mike Baczynski, who led the kind of the focus school efforts through Michigan State, said we had the highest growth of any focus school in the state of Michigan. From there, I went to Southfield Public Schools, where I'm currently, and I'm the director of post-secondary options and community partnerships, and we've done a lot of great things there. So the reason that I'm interested in this job is because it reminds me of the community I grew up in. The balance of demographics to pride, tradition, to the working class mentality matches the core values of a lot of the schools that I've worked at and the community I grew up in. This is very important to me. The other thing is, I know when I look at Wayne Westland schools, they're a perfect combination of success and challenges. The success are everything from early collegehood to your virtual schools to right next door, the William D. Ford Career Technical Center, that's state renowned. Some of the challenges come from the state assessments, discipline, attendance, college and career readiness. These are all areas that I've tackled in other diverse school districts, and we've had huge success with it. So
That kind of acts as a segue into my second question, which would ask you specifically what you thought the immediate challenges were, but also, of all of those challenges, what do you think needs to be addressed first? Given what you know about our district.
Outside of the funding, which is going to be faced with any school district in the state of Michigan, where I'd like to concentrate on is literacy. And the reason that I pick literacy, because it hits the third grade reading law, it hits the state assessments, it hits college and career readiness, and I think by attacking literacy within districts, because really reading is the spine that holds all the subjects together, we are able to kind of address the needs. Standardized tests are simply reading tests. And I've had experience in 2 different districts changing kind of per se the test scores, but changing instruction really. And one, we use reading apprenticeship, and we kind of leveled the professional learning all the way through. And in another district, we use close and critical reading strategies that were able to address the needs there. The thing that happened is you have interventions that are born out of that to help old kids. Our whole mission is to hit every kid on the continuum. The thing that we saw is we created power reading classes with supports like Achieve 3000, and we actually saw students in some cases jump 5th and 6th grade levels within a year. Again, it helped to improve the course of our school and our district.
You mentioned in your opening comments that one of the things that you were effective at doing is creating a collaborative effort between the teachers and yourself and the community. Mm-hmm. And given some of the challenges that you just mentioned with the Wayne Westland District, and the fact that some of that exists here as well, what would you do to create the collaboration that you would need in order to bring about that type of change?
Yeah. The first thing is going around and having conversations with people, talking and listening. One of the biggest things in both positions that when I took over as principal at Lincoln as well as Warren Mott is to listen. Because again, a lot of times I've seen great initiatives get bulldozed by poor rollouts. And in order to, I think at the bedrock of the communication and building relationships has to be trust at any level of the organization. It has to be the bedrock. You have to make a concerted effort to go out and speak to people, face-to-face. You have to have constant communication through email, social media. If you don't, you're never going to be able to kind of move the dial on things because people are going to feel left out and that they don't have a voice. So we set up, coffee with the principal, or, different things, initiatives we've created that really bring the community in. The schools have to become the hub of the community because, again, that's who we service. We're servant leaders. We need to make sure that we do everything in our power to connect with the communities that we're serving.
Thank you, Mr. Dignan. I appreciate your responses. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Weaver.
Thank you for appearing tonight, Mr. Dignan.
Yep.
Maintaining healthy relationships with school and community stakeholders is important to the Board of Education. Please share with us how you have gone about building and maintaining successful relationships with diverse groups of district stakeholders.
Okay. Every district that I've worked in has been very diverse. So I'm going to start with one district. We had a lot of need within this district. Probably we had doses of Appalachian poverty. So what we did is we started connecting with outside resources around us to help service our community. One of the big things was a lot of families did not have insurance, nor did the kids. So we created, with partnership with the University of Michigan, created a school-based health clinic that was opened up to our whole community, K through 12, and then they would have after school hours to address our community. That helped a lot, especially with some of our parents that when they worked, they couldn't take time off because there was money out of their pockets. But having a school-based health clinic, we could meet the needs of our kids. In another district that I worked in, it was a different type of poverty, but it was, we had a lot of refugees that were at the school, so we needed to make sure that we partnered with a lot of outside agencies and kind of overcome language barriers. So we would partner with Samaritas to have translators and kind of help walk our parents through processes. We had a health clinic there too. We had a dinner program that we set up. It was part of the meet-up, greet-up. And the only thing that we had there is that kids had to participate in something extracurricular after school because we wanted them to be invested in our school. So it could be tutoring, it could be athletics, it could be band, but they were involved in something after school. So again, there's a lot of different programs and things that we can do. But again, we need to figure out what the needs of our community are. And through that collaboration between all stakeholders, whether it be the school board, teachers, the community at large, we rally around and we kind of galvanize, create the community that we want and envision.
Thank you. What are some examples of community activities for which you have provided leadership, and in what ways did they benefit your district?
Yep. I'll give you one recent one. We've just created a fire academy at our high school. And part of the reason we did a study with Michigan Works and to figure out what careers that there's need. In Oakland County, 50% of the firefighters are going to retire in the next 5 years. And that goes statewide. So we had to partner with the fire chiefs in Oakland County, Oakland Community College CREST program, which is second to none. We had to partner with a bunch of different entities to kind of create this fire academy. We're going to roll it out next year, and we're going to have our first cohort. So again, that's one way to service the community. The other one is more comprehensive. We have engineering classes at our high school, and this one is a partnership through Lawrence Tech, Eastern Michigan, and Denso. And I'm probably gonna get a little long-winded, so I hope I don't bore anybody. But what this is basically a pathway in engineering. We partnered with SME. They're gonna help fundraise to buy the equipment needs and give us access to Tooling University through online stuff where our kids can get industry certification from welding to you name it. The whole plan is when kids enter their junior year, that they will be able to gain 23 college credits. And the great thing about this is that our teachers have been vetted, so we're doing concurrent enrollment. So our teachers are teaching the class, kids are getting high school credit, but they're also getting college credit. We're partnering with Denso, which is a huge international engineering company. They're headquartered in Southfield. The second semester of the senior year, we want to rotate kids through the different facets of engineering. So every 4 weeks, they'll switch kind of their job shadowing experience. Again, we have to start thinking down the road to connect our kids to careers and to help them figure out, because college isn't for everyone, and I understand that. We need to start doing a better job of pushing both college and career readiness, because sometimes, I'm telling you, there's so many opportunity in skilled trades that we need to have kids understand that, and then they make the decision of what's best for them.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question for you. How do you think various stakeholders, parents, community, staff, should be involved in our decision-making and setting direction for the district?
They have to be every step of the way. We have to get the community in a lot of different voices. The more I've learned about just working on different projects, always somebody's going to give a different perspective. We need to listen to that. And I think it makes whatever we're trying to do a lot stronger. I know, like I talked about earlier, I set up 2 different health clinics, both in Ypsilanti and Warren. I just finalized the one that we have in Southfield. I've learned from the other 2. One of the things that I learned, and it came about hard, is that once we had the school-based health clinic, it was open K through 12. A lot of the resources were being pulled out of the clinic for the elementary schools, of the middle schools. So what we did is we wanted coverage for every lane within our district. So we now partnered, not only are we going to have a school-based health clinic, but we have a partnership with CNS Healthcare and Easter Seals. So every single school has mental health, counseling that our community can access. And again, this would never have come about without the collaboration of so many people, counselors, teachers, community members, just everybody kind of rallying around. I think whatever the idea may be, it becomes stronger with the more voices you have.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Hines?
Good evening. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're here today. I just have a few questions for you as well. Equity and excellence are 2 themes that come up frequently in our discussions about K through 12 education. Do we need to make a choice between these issues, or can we do both? Please explain.
Yeah, I think we can do both. And the reason that we can, my whole thing is building relationships, advancing equity, and promoting success. We can do that by having a lot of different people working together. We always think it has to come from the general fund. The one thing I've learned in my current position, businesses, higher ed, so many different nonprofits want to help. I'll give you an example. So we needed a lot of things 2 years ago to back to school, paper, and then we created wish lists. Well, what we decided to do, and I led the charge because I communicate with the business community, we created a competition. It was called the Corporate Cup Challenge. And what we did is each company adopted schools. And the schools would have the basic needs like crayons, whatever it may be, and we would present that. But they also had a wish list for project-based learning, things like that. It was amazing. We raised over $100,000 for all of our schools by the donations because of the partnerships with all the companies around us. Right now, we're trying to align our entrepreneurship. So we have a thing called youth entrepreneurship. And what this is, and I'll just give a Cliff Notes version of it, it's basically a standing curriculum. Each classroom is given $15,000. The money is used for the kids. They create a business plan, and then It's both middle school and high school. They create a business plan, and through that business plan, once it's okay, then they produce a product. We have what's called market day, so the kids get to sell it. They have to pay back whatever money they had, but they get to keep the profit. We have another partnership through the University of Michigan, Flint, with Young Sharks, which has a 3rd to 6th grade block for entrepreneurship. We're gonna connect it so our kids kind of run all the way through. One other thing, and I would suggest that Wayne Westland look into this, there's a partnership with Boot Up and Amazon, and what it is to provide professional development in coding, K through 8th grade, with all of the resources, and you'd be eligible just looking at the free and reduced lunch numbers. And they come in and train your staff, but that could be another spoke for our students. Just like we have gym and music at the elementaries, have teachers get trained to teach them coding, because then when the students matriculate through the system and get up to the high school level, they will be more advanced in what they can do in regards to coding. Maybe they're the ones that create apps in their different fields, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What are specific ways in which our district should be helping other local districts meet their student achievement goals?
Could you repeat that?
Yes. What are specific ways in which our district should be helping other local districts meet their student achievement goals?
So from Wayne Westland to help other districts?
Yes.
I think one of the biggest things is to kind of set systems in place, look like how curriculum, assessment, instruction is lined up. I know in the past what we did, just kind of moved the dial on student achievement, is we created common assessments, and then we backwards designed from there and kind of set curriculum maps and pacing guides within the curriculum maps. But the biggest thing that I think happened, we created concept maps. So then we started benchmarking our curriculum, where we had unit assessments, and credit to all the teachers, because teachers work so hard, and our teachers in both districts were incredible because they set it in motion. And what happened was they would start pushing out instruction in 2 and 3 week blocks, where they would share common language, activities, what they were trying to do. They would have a unit assessment, and then when we get back in our professional learning communities, they would kind of discuss what worked, what didn't, where kids were at, and that really helped us more than anything else. It was the summative, formative assessment at the classroom level that then would move up to the building level and then the district. And that's how we, more than anything else, that's how we really moved student achievement, because we had a universal instructional framework that the teachers were a part of, that they created in their classroom, and then we created a balanced assessment system that helped us move the student achievement of all of our kids.
Okay, and my last question is, what impact do you feel that Every Student Succeeds Act is having on Michigan school districts? And I'll repeat it one more time.
Yep.
What impact do you feel that Every Student Succeeds Act is having on Michigan school districts?
I think it hurts. It would be different if we had a level playing field. We're playing with about $2,000 less dollars than it is to just on a baseline level to educate a kid. That's not counting special ed, transportation, and a lot of these other costs. It's just difficult. That's why I think a lot of times school districts have to create partnerships and think outside the box to get other entities to come in and kind of help service all kids. And I think through that, and really more than anything else, the ingenuity of teachers. The greatest ideas I've ever seen have been by teachers. And to create a channel of communication where they can voice what they want to do, I think is huge.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Talking about the money, I think it's time for the treasurer to ask some questions.
Okay. I wonder what
Buckler?
questions I'm going to get asked here.
You've touched on a number of the things that I want to ask about this evening already, but I'll give you another chance at them. So could you describe, please, some experiences you've had with budget development and financial management, including some difficult budget cuts, please?
Yes. Being a high school principal, I had two comprehensive budgets. One, we would use site-based, and the other, we use zero-based budgeting. Now, at the central office level, I have Perkins funding, millage funding, K-12, college and career readiness funding, and get to sit in district-level cabinet meetings. So again, I'm part of that process. I know, like, we look at and talk about the function codes, who's responsible for what budget. We have meetings many times to determine and prioritize based on our strategic plan of where the money is going to be spent. Because again, in the tough financial times, I think communication and people understanding what's needed, and really the guiding force should be our strategic plan. And with that being said, I think school improvement plans should be connected to that strategic plan, so we can really kind of connect the resources there.
Thank you.
Yep.
So my second question is, what opportunities do you believe budget limitations present in tough financial times? What are your top three priorities? And again, I think you've touched on some of this already too, but I'll give you another shot at it.
Three top priority. Again, I think that should be dictated through your strategic plan. And the consensus should come from so many stakeholders of what it is that's most pressing. I know right here, just looking at the data and some of the research I did, I think literacy would be a big one. I think professional development and maybe culturally competent teaching, and looking at some of the discipline and attendance issues that the data has. College and career readiness, and try to figure out ways that you can offset some of the costs of the general fund through grants, through foundations like the Ralph Wilson Foundation to do capital projects, the Steve Ballmer Group, which again, you can get a lot of money. We actually, NAF, which is the National Academy Foundation, we actually had the United Way foot the bill, which was pretty substantial, so we could develop IT and business academies in our traditional comprehensive high school. So again, that frees up more money for us to put in other buckets and other areas of need.
Thank you.
Yep.
And my final question is, what ideas might you explore to obtain additional revenue for the district? And have you had success in obtaining additional funds for your district, and if so, how?
Yep. I'll give you a few. I always think it's important to try to figure out revenue streams into the district. Just give you some examples. We have 14 schools in Southfield. I was able to partner with Big Green Detroit. They put a garden at each of the schools. The cost was about $23,000. Not a dollar came out of the general fund. It was covered. It was a standing curriculum. Our kids are responsible to take care of their gardens. It's not just culinary, but it's science classes. We have a lot of different classes involved. Another example, the health clinic that I've been talking about, that's all grant funded. The only thing they can't do is touch the walls. So anything that we do to the walls, we have to pay. They will cover even the labor, and it's typically done by our people that are in our unions to do the work, and they get paid through the grant, which really helps. And again, that's probably about $365,000. We have a mentoring program, and I know you guys here have the Wayne Champions and Champions John Glenn Mentoring. We use Winning Futures, where we have business professionals that come in and they work with our students once a week. And it's probably about 3 to 1, so for every 3 kids, there's 1 mentor. And to run that program costs over $100,000. We do not pay a dime. So Those are just examples of different ways that you can find revenue streams. And I also have another one I want to share. We developed this past year Microsoft Teals. And what it is it's a computer science program. We have 5 professionals, and again, we had to have conversations with our union to make sure that we were following the language of the contract. We have 5 IT professionals that come in and assist our computer science teacher in teaching the latest in computer science. Does not cost us a dime. Again, that's another program. So again, I think there are different ways that you can get creative of getting programs that your kids need without necessarily spending a lot of money, if any money at all. So then you can use some of that other money to go into other programs to develop those.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Buckaloo. Mr. Dignan, Mrs. Madell has some questions relating to instruction and curriculum. Mrs. Madell?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can I call you John?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Carol.
Okay.
I have an extensive background in education, so this is my category. So I know that you've mentioned a lot of things about experience and success with trying to close the achievement gap. I need you to dig just a little deeper. Based on economic opportunities and other demographic factors, how were you able to close up some of those achievement gaps?
Okay. The biggest thing is establishing relationships with your teaching staff. Again, they have to trust the work. Like I said earlier, I've seen great initiatives get bulldozed by poor rollouts. So one of the things that we were able to do is really be intentional with our work. So because we landed on the PLA list, you have 90 days to submit a plan. Part of that forced us to really get to work on what does that look like? What do we want our school to look like? So one of the things that we did is decided common assessments, we needed to start there as the point. Once we did that, we backwards designed, and then we started benchmarking our curriculum. So we set curriculum maps, the standards that the teachers were going to teach in that specific subject, and then we set our pacing guides within those curriculum maps. We created concept maps that were now pushed out for each of the units. So now we're creating a balanced assessment system where our kids, through the units, are having a common experience through the content. Now, the nice thing that we eventually evolved to in one of the districts, we went to tiered assessments. So as teachers pre and post test their students to see where they're at, they would pre-test, and we might have 4 versions of the same test that were differentiated. We got to that point, and we were able to start moving kids through this process. I mean, it goes a lot deeper than that, from the building level, data talks and stuff that we were having, but that basically started moving the dial for student achievement, because what it forces you to do, what are you going to do for the kids that didn't get it? So what happened was we started creating interventions. We created ELA and math coaches where in week 8 to 10, we would identify kids that might fail either English or math, and we ended up putting them online with coaches to get them caught up. And I know you guys use Ingenuity here, where it's master level learning. Once they would get caught up, we would either offer them the choice to go back into that class or they could stay online. Another intervention that was born out of it was with the Power English of getting, because again, to me, one of the most important skills to have academically is the ability to read. We were finding a lot of kids were reading at an elementary level and couldn't even navigate the textbooks in their classes. So then we really gave them support there, and by doing that, we saw improvement across the board, because we would have the kids at the end of the power reading basically to give us through a narrative how it helped them academically, and it was amazing to read these. I feel like I'm doing better in all my classes, and again, they were, because they were increasing their Lexiles, and they were at a level where now they could compete in the classroom. and to give kids that self-esteem. I mean, it's a model, but again, it takes everybody working together and getting everybody on board. If you don't have relationships and the trust amongst staff, it's never going to happen.
Thank you. Please give us an example of educational change or reform that you have initiated in your current and previous positions that have led to improvements in student learning. I think you named several.
Yeah.
already.
Probably the biggest and is really the common assessment work and that whole dynamic of really benchmarking our curriculum. Because the other thing it allowed us to do was to take some of the state data and start to pin it back to our curriculum. We didn't have the ability to do that before. But the thing that really impressed me more than anything else was the ability of our classroom teachers to use summative and formative assessment to kind of gauge their instruction and tell them it's okay. You can reteach. You can reteach. A lot of times teachers feel they have to go on to content marches because they have to meet these curriculum standards. Meanwhile, kids are falling down on the side of the road, and we don't have the interventions or the ability to reteach concepts to get these kids caught back up. And that crushes their self-esteem. And again, you know, I think that more than anything else, I think has probably played one of the biggest roles in student achievement, just having an intentional plan and idea of how we wanted to kind of attack our scores. Because again, when I look at state assessments, the AMOs are constantly moving. They're moving targets. And if we focus more on growth than achievement, we're going to get to the achievement just through growth in classrooms, growth in schools. You're going to start to see the dial move just through that process.
Thank you, John. Last question.
Sure.
How would you meet the needs of college readiness while also providing high-quality, relevant, skilled trades and career-focused opportunities for the students?
I love that question.
Saved it for last.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, again, building partnerships. We've created so many, we have a partnership, and again, I'm just gonna go down the line, then I'm gonna get to the skilled trade part. We have a partnership with the University of Michigan. It's called Wolverine Pathways. It's run 7th through 12th grade. It's an enrichment opportunity for our students. It's a phenomenal program. And our kids that go through it and end up in good academic standing get a 4-year full scholarship to the University of Michigan, Dearborn or Flint. Last year, 30% of the incoming African-American population at the University of Michigan was from Southfield. I'm talking the whole country. So, I mean, that's something that we're very proud of. Another one is Wayne State C2 Pipeline Program. It's enrichment after school. It doesn't cost the district anything. You just have to get in on their grant. It runs Monday through Thursday. And they work on things like drones. They basically do a needs assessment on what the teachers and kids want to do, and then they kind of build their program from there. And again, it's another enrichment opportunity for many kids. We have a partnership with Lawrence Tech called the Blue Devil Promise, and the pipeline there is if kids meet the academic standards, then they get their tuition covered at Lawrence Tech. So we set up these partnerships to give kids the ability and really pipelines to different places. With skilled trades, I have a great relationship with all of the training facilities and a lot of the union presidents of the different locals. We did a thing last year, it was called Build Your Future. And what it was we had 75 skilled trades and other careers. It was a hands-on activity. And we pushed our middle school kids through it to kind of create the exposure. We were intentional with our high school students to kind of line up apprenticeships and things of that nature. The cool thing with us is that by developing relationships with other entities in the community, so for instance, Michigan Works, we created a carpentry apprenticeship program with the training facility in Ferndale. Our kids could go there and they were paid through Michigan Works to do their apprenticeship. So it was unbelievable. Right now we're creating a deal. We're kind of building the program from scratch with Big Boy Restaurants. And what we're doing there is some of our culinary arts students and some of our business marketing students are going to be able to go through kind of this work-based learning opportunity there at the same time being paid through Michigan Works. So, I mean, there's different ways that you can kind of connect and partner different things. I think, I know just talking in some of my conversations with skilled trades unions and kind of training directors, one of the big things is there's such a need for these it's access to the middle class. We have to let kids know that these opportunities exist. A lot of times, you know, and I think sometimes, you know, we've pushed college readiness so much for the last decade that we forgot about other kids, and kids almost that don't even necessarily want to go to college feel like failures if they don't, when you have opportunities in the skilled trades that are waiting for them. And again, it's access to the middle class for a lot of kids. And I think kids that are interested, some kids have their intelligence in their hands. There's a lot of different types of learners. So I think we can do a great job of promoting that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Madell. Mrs. Walker has some questions concerning the attributes of leadership. Mrs. Walker?
How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, thank you. My first question is, what is the most difficult situation you have you've had to deal with in your educational career, and how was it resolved?
Okay. The hardest one is anytime you lose a child in your district. For me personally, the hardest thing that I've ever had to do as an educator, we had a young man that kind of went down in the bottom of the pool, and we had some kids rescue him. That whole process was just, it was one of the hardest experiences I've ever had as an educator. We had training for our crisis response team, first aid, CPR. It was amazing how our kids responded, how the teacher, how our community assistant responded to the situation, how quick the secretaries were able to get the ambulance there. I rode the ambulance with the young man to the hospital, and we didn't know if he was going to make it. Meanwhile, Channel 7, all the news, already had it before we were even out of our parking lot. And to wait for the mother and father to show up, not knowing if their child was going to either live or die, is one of the hardest things that I've ever had to experience. And to hug the mother and just that whole process, and he was in the hospital for a week. That more than anything, we can talk policies, but when you start talking about children, and that's why I'm in this profession, I love kids. And that was the hardest thing that I've ever had to deal with.
Thank you. My next question is, what are the key elements needed to establish and maintain a healthy and highly effective working relationship between you and our board?
Just the communication, getting to know people one-on-one, setting up retreats to see what the collective of the group is. But again, if we don't have relationships, there can't be trust. And the thing about building authentic relationships, it has to be anchored in trust. That's the bedrock. So the only way that can happen is through communication. Some of it's one-on-one, some of it is collectively, but to get to know each and every one on the board, understand the vision and stuff like that, and listen. And listen, more than anything else, I think listening is the most important skill to figure out what people perceive is, what are some of the things that we're doing very well, what are some things that need improvement, and I think that can come through.
Thank you. And my final question is, given your research of our district, what do you believe our vision for the future should be, And how might you inspire and engage the entire district in pursuit of this vision?
I think probably the biggest thing is what does a graduate from Wayne Westland schools look like, K through 12? And again, in this case, from the cradle to post-secondary, because of the early childhood programs that we have here. What's the portrait of a graduate? What does that look like? And what are we gonna do to fulfill our obligation and promise to our community to make that happen? And again, the voices have to come from the community, the staff, there has to be student voice. Everyone has to have a say in that. But again, there's no question in my mind, if we start focusing on that, the student achievement takes care of itself. Some of the student discipline and attendance takes care of itself because kids are gonna wanna be in the school. Kids are gonna have that pride to be in the schools. Again, the more we can get kids to invest, the more they're all in. And again, part of our job is to do that. How do we do that? By figuring out what kids are interested in doing and supporting them. And I think that more than anything else has to be the mission of Wayne Westland Schools.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Walker. Mr. Neal, our secretary, now has some questions concerning staff and personnel matters. Mr. Neal?
Yes, Mr. Dignan, please describe your most successful experience in building a high-performing work team.
I'm going to use probably the NAF one this time. So NAF's the National Academy Foundation, and we had to galvanize our teaching staff. We had to partner. They've crosswalked all their standards to the Common Core. So now we're in the phase of setting up the professional development. It had a pretty stiff price tag to it, but we were able to partner with the United Way to kind of pay that cost, which really helped us. So now we can use other money. We're talking about sending a team of teachers and administrators and counselors to both Milwaukee and Miami this summer to get trained because they have high-performing schools in both IT and business. But just to have the constant communication and dialogue, because you have so many moving parts. So I talked about earlier the Microsoft Teams program that we introduced this year. We also created a Cisco Network Academy class and built a Cisco lab, which cost us close to $100,000. And by having that, we're exposing our kids to a lot of different opportunities there. So we're kind of building up and ramping that up. Our idea is this next year to go IT and business in our academies. Then we want to bring culinary and hospitality on the following year with engineering. The year after that, we're going to do performing arts, and we're also going to do, now I'm drawing a blank, of course, health sciences. So we're building on these blocks and having these goals, and it gives us time to secure partnerships and people, and we're hoping that the team that's leading the IT and business work will serve models for the next two teams that we introduce, so.
Okay, very good. How would the president of your teachers union describe you?
Ask them.
Did you
Yeah.
invite him?
Great relationship. And every place I've been, we've had strong unions. His name's Dave Rather, a phenomenal gentleman, advocates for all the right things. Again, in my personal opinion, the two things that govern everybody's behavior in the organization is contract language and board policy. And I keep Dave in the loop on everything because his voice, he needs to know what direction we're going. Because if I don't, then like I said before, even if it's a great initiative, it might get bulldozed because I didn't communicate with the proper people. And I think if you're truly going to build transparency and honesty, then you need to have people in that dialogue. So now all the board, I actually was the union president of my union, my administrative union. We had over 50 members, so.
Okay. And lastly, what would you suggest in terms of comprehensive professional development plan for our educators? Specifically, what would be the key priority area as well as the delivery system?
I think that the biggest thing with professional learning is to connect it again to your strategic plan. What are the goals of the district? Again, every school improvement plan should be connected to the district school improvement plan or strategic plan. I think that's paramount, because then you can start to cycle the professional learning that your organization needs. Too many times, I think we get a scattergun approach where one building's doing one and no one knows who's doing what. And I think if you can be more intentional on understanding and prioritizing what are the goals, what are the 2 or 3 goals that we need to accomplish as an organization. Once we have that, we can build a professional learning plan for that for the district. But again, you need to have union voices in there. You need to talk to teachers, whether it be building leadership. Everyone should have a voice in what that looks like. Because again, the teachers are the practitioners, the administrators are in the building. Even though you're gonna push in, they're gonna have a better handle on what's needed. And that's why I think they need to have a voice in what that looks like.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Dignan.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Sir, appreciate your response. As I said at the beginning of this interview process, if we had time at the end, we would provide you with an opportunity to ask questions of the board. You have questions for the board?
Yes, I do. And this is just collectively, what leadership characteristics, skill set are you looking for in your next superintendent?
Mr. Neal?
Well, I think most importantly, that you're able to work effectively with the board. Obviously, we're very concerned about that, and our employees. In order to be happy, our employees have to feel that they're well served by the superintendent, and that your communication with them, for me, would be paramount.
Okay.
Mrs. Walker?
I would agree that a collaborative relationship with all our staff, to be able to understand the values that we have in this area, to be able to listen to our employees and not feel that they're not important to whatever decision that you have. And the most important is to make sure that our kids are on a level playing field and are able to compete in a global society. That's the biggest thing.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Mandel?
Hard act to follow, because they've named a lot of really great stuff. Top of the list is always communication, and with communication comes listening and sharing and making sure that it's authentic when you are dealing with school board, parents, employees, anybody, partners, doesn't matter. Making sure that you're up to date on everything that's coming out of the state, coming across from the nation, because this is a rapidly changing field, as you are aware, that the wall is constantly moving and it's hard to reach it. And making sure that we're informed of everything that we need to know, because we are out in the community, and I really don't like being surprised by reading a post on Facebook or having an angry person come at me for cutting their job, or their kid no longer has a program and I'm unaware of internal decisions that have been made. I don't need to be part of the process, I just need to be informed as to what decisions have been made so that I can come back with a educated, quality answer for those concerns.
Mr. Dignan, will you read your question again? And then I'm going to ask Mr. Buckaloo to respond.
Yeah, collectively, what leadership characteristics, skill sets are you looking for in your next superintendent?
Mr. Buckaloo?
Well, I might try to answer it this way by telling you a little bit about this board. We pretty much are consistent in our belief that we're here for the kids. On top of that, we also know our role as a board, and that is to set policy and not to interfere with the day-to-day activities. So you should know that about us. I too, like Ms. Medell, am an educator. And one thing that I've experienced over the years is a willingness to be led and a resistance to being pushed. And that is something that I would expect to see in our educational leader.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hines?
Yes, to me, something that's very important is honesty and transparency. One thing that I've learned with our MSAB courses is we don't like surprises, just as Ms. Medell said. And it works both ways with our superintendent. As board members, if things come about, we need to let our superintendent know as soon as possible. And in reverse, if our superintendent does find out things, we need to know as soon as possible. And one thing that's really big with me is community involvement. Caring about our children. And one thing I loved about your interview is you were saying a lot that you do a lot in the community with partnerships. So to me, that's very important. And looking at what can we give to our children so they can be successful. So making sure they have the right programs in place, that we, have the funds available. So being resourceful is very important. But those are very important. Honesty, transparency, trust, very important. And making sure that we have a solid plan for our children.
Thank you.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes, Mr. Dignan, you mentioned early on the importance of listening. And I would like, if you were to become our superintendent, I would like you to be able to hear the voice in the back of the room among the wilderness of voices and be able to pick out the great idea, even though the person presenting may not even seem to be capable of that, but somehow it rolls out the great thing. And I'd like you to be able to, pick up on that and move forward with the great idea.
Makes sense.
I think my colleagues have answered this question
Yeah.
very well. They certainly have answered it with what I'm thinking. What I've always thought is that in spite of the large size of this school district, it really, and I've said it many times, it really isn't the buildings and the buses. It's the people. It's the educators. And it's such a big job. No one person could be expected to do it fitfully unless they had the support and the allegiance of all of the people in the classrooms. So what's most important to me is how they're treated. These people need to feel that they're respected, that their work is respected, and that their opinion is, and it's a fun place to come to work. I think the synergy that we need for the students in the classroom comes from those educators, and that synergy ultimately would come from the superintendent. Everybody has to be working together, and that's what I want to see. And in the phrases that all my colleagues have already used, it's about the people here. It's about the little people, and it's about the big people.
Yeah.
So, any other questions?
Yeah, and you briefly touched it. What do you view as the most pressing issues facing the district? And I think you guys hit that home. What do you see as the area of growth within the district?
Well, I'd love to answer that first, but I'm not going to. Mr. Buckaloo?
What do I see as the need for growth?
Yeah, areas of growth in the district.
I think we need to address the issue of equity. And most often that's attached to the idea of funding, and that's part of it. But I think we need to provide an equity education as well. We have all sorts of kids come through our doors, and each and every one of them is our responsibility. So I would think that would be first and foremost in my mind.
Okay.
Ms. Hines?
One thing we definitely need to really focus and get back on is the test scores, increasing the test scores, and having a strategic plan in order to get those back on track.
Ms. Bedell?
All right, could you repeat the question again? Because I want to make sure I address it correctly.
What do you see as areas of growth in the district?
Well, I think Mr. Buckaloo mentioned, funding. That's always, that's everybody's issue. And the loss of students,
Stabilize.
as our population is declining, so is our student population here in our district. I think we can tighten up a lot of things that we are already doing. I think we're on the right track. We need to focus on a lot of things that we are already working on, things like test scores, things like college readiness, things like skilled trades, making sure we meet the needs of the students better than we are meeting them now. We just need to tighten it up. We've got a lot of things in the air, and some of them need to be just brought and refocused a little bit, channeled down a little bit more than they are now. And I think we're on the right track. We've always been on the right track. We just need a little more direction sometimes.
Mrs. Walker?
As always, student achievement is always top on the list, but also the person needs to understand that we have students in our community from all over. It's not just Wayne and Westland, we have Inkster, we have Canton, we have Romulus. So how the importance is to bring everyone together and make everyone feel as if they're included, as they're a part. If anyone who knows me know I consider this a family. So to make sure that everyone feels that they're a part of this family and everyone's getting the same respect, the same education, and that no one is made to feel different, no matter where they are in their educational journey, that we, just to strengthen that, and I think that once you can bring those bonds, the achievement and everything will go, if that answers it.
Yeah, no, it does, thank you.
May I hear the question again, please?
Yeah, what do you see as areas of growth in the district?
Mr. Neal?
Well, I'm hoping we could see growth in the student population, but that would have to come with some changes in programming, and a lot of which I've actually heard you talk about. Some greater focus on technical training. We have a great technical education center, but more emphasis on the programs that they provide, maybe more diversity in the programs that they provide, and partnering with some of the same people that you talked about partnering with in order to make that happen and to grow those programs. Also, we're one of few areas where we actually do some online education, and I'd like to see that program improved, not improved, but expanded, and advertise such, which might allow us to get more students to come into our district.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes, there's so many areas, as you well know, but I'm going to keep it very simple. I'd like for our graduates, all of them, to be able to read at graduate level and be able to go out into the world and have an honest chance to make their mark. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think everything that my colleagues mentioned is important and valuable, and I think we have a tremendous opportunity with the Technical Center, with the Ford Technical Center. You mentioned it in your remarks, and in fact, it was a diamond in the state, and it could be again. However, there's a lack of educators in these fields right now, just as there's a lack of labor in general.
Yeah.
And I think it would take a relationship with many of the trade unions in the region in order to put together a program. But I think that program can serve students, but it can also serve the
community.
adult population. The adult population of this community has been very supportive financially in bond issues and what have you, and they are people that would benefit greatly from trades training. They could go to work in the multitude of jobs that are available in the Detroit area that we know just because we're letting our own bid packages, we know what the availability of this labor is. We could be serving our community a lot better in that area. I think what Mr. Neal said about the homeschool there's an entire grouping of people that would benefit greatly from the program that we have here in Wayne Westland. It's like so many of the wonderful things that are done here is virtually a secret. We don't do any advertising outreach to the extent that other districts do to get the word out about what's available here. We handle it, we put it together for our students, but there's many more students out there that could benefit, and they would be growth for our district if we could outreach to them.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We have time for more questions, or we have time for a comment from you, whatever you like, sir.
No, again, I just want to say thank you for having me here this evening. I loved what you said about kind of connecting the community to opportunities, because again, I think the more we can make our schools the hub of the community and brand and market what we already have here, I think, like you said, it's a hidden gem, and people just don't know about the opportunities that are here. And you know, part of our job too, we always think education ends after 12th grade, but our job with the community education here too is to educate the community, so.
Thank you very much. So we certainly appreciate having a man of your stature here to talk to us tonight. So thank you so much. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you.